So, starting off nice and easy, do you drink a lot of coffee?
Yes. I love coffee.
And would you consider yourself to be like a snob about coffee, or are you just like, whatever, just put it in a jug and pour it down my throat kind of thing?
I'm not a snob, but I'm becoming one because I started getting Good Dudes coffee, and
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I've seen you post about that. Yeah.
yeah, it's really, really good. And like, my agent Cooper helps with Good Dudes, and he found out sometimes that I would drink Folgers, and he was really mad. So he said, "You're never drinking Folgers again," and I haven't. So
Yeah.
I always have Good Dudes, and now like if I do have something cheaper for whatever reason, I kind of notice the difference
Yeah.
and
That
replace
it's a
it with
curse, like, because you taste, if you have something really nice and then you go back, you're like, oh, it's not just not the same.
it's kind of like nothing.
Yeah. I got a bag of Good Dudes when they launched first. Like, I think like it was like last March, maybe like a year ago, a year and a half ago, and I was like, okay, CrossFit coffee. I love the two of those. I love the people behind it. I like have to get it.
Right.
Um, but it ended up it was like, maybe $13 or something for the bag of coffee, and then like $25 shipping. So it ended up being like a $40 bag of coffee. And I was just like, yeah, I mean, it's nice, but I don't know, maybe I'll just wait till I go to America and then I'll
Yeah.
do it that way. Cause
Stock up on it.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Um, I love hearing about guests' coffee memories. So like originally when I started asking this question, I had intended it to be like, say, oh, I had an amazing coffee when I was in, I don't know, like Timbuktu 12 years ago or whatever. But then it kind of morphed into people answering it based more on like, I've probably driven it that way by accident as well, but like, oh, I was in such and such a place with such and such a person and we heard news about something, or I remember being on holidays and, like a forgettable cup of coffee, but a memorable experience. Is there anything that stands out for you?
There's two things that stand out. Number one, when my husband like had first messaged me before like basically to go on our first date, he was like, let's grab a drink or something along those lines. But he was like, I don't drink coffee. And I was like, okay. So like, and I don't even remember what we ended. I think we didn't ended up not getting coffee, but since then, like since he started dating me, he started drinking coffee and now he loves coffee. So it's like,
He's learned.
yeah, it's so funny now. I mean, he's still one of those people like really likes it, but he could also go without it. Like if I'm not home to make the coffee, he just won't drink coffee, which is like mind blowing to me because I would never
Maybe
do
maybe when
that.
you're not looking, he's like throwing it out of the cup. He's just
Yeah.
it's been a lie all these years. He's like, I love coffee, and he's just like dumping it over his shoulder.
He's just not like that attached to it, but he's not like one of those people that's like super attached to food or drinks and stuff in
Yeah,
general. So he's just kind of like, yeah, it's great, but if it's not there, I'm not gonna go out of my way for it.
yeah.
And then when we went to Australia for, I did the Down Under Championship, just coffee there is like really good. Like the first time we went to a place, we're all like, so can we have like a black coffee? They're like, yeah, you guys are Americans, we don't do that here. And we're like, okay, so what do we order? So it's like you basically can get a flat white or a long black, and it's like espresso. And I like the espresso with milk, so like we drank that every morning, and it was just like super yummy. I've always liked lattes, but it definitely made my love for lattes greater.
Yeah, I think flat whites are like they're like a latte or a cappuccino, but like more punchy. Like there's more of a coffee kick to it. So I think,
Yeah, I
yeah,
think
if
there's
you
like two shots in it, maybe. It depends on the size, but I think
yeah.
there's two shots, and then it's just like steamed milk. Like I usually get like steamed almond milk or something, so it's really, really good.
Yeah, I think Australia, just anyone who's ever been there, it's always the thing that they say if you ask anything about the coffee, they're like, "Oh, when I was in Australia," it's like, "God, man, I really need to go to Australia."
Yeah.
Um, you obviously have like, I suppose, more downtime now than you'd normally have. What like do you listen to podcasts? Do you listen to music? Do you listen to anything when you're training? Do you try and vary what you listen to, or do you care?
Um, I listen to music, but I'm not. I love country music, but I'm not like a crazy like listen to music all the time. I listen to it as I'm doing things. I do listen to a lot of podcasts.
What are your go-tos?
Um, I listen to Justin Sua every morning. His is like it's only like 2 minutes or
Mm.
something, but I'm a big fan of Justin. And then some occasionally I listen to CrossFit ones, but it's kind of weird for me sometimes to listen to them. Mostly I
Is
like
that out
physical
of
therapy
like
type
fear,
stuff.
if they talk about you?
Yeah, like what are they gonna if I come up in conversation, what am I gonna hear about myself?
Skip.
Well, I don't want to hear this. But yeah, a lot of like I do listen to Joe Rogan occasionally. His are really long, but
Mm.
I just like there's some physical therapy ones that I really like to just like keep my mind sharp in that direction because I'm not currently practicing as a physical therapist. So
Mm. Our physical therapy podcast, like, it's a difficult medium to do to explain physical therapy to. I guess if you're talking to an audience that knows what you're talking about, it's probably easier. But
and
I'm
a lot
imagining
of
trying
the
to
I listen
explain it to
to
someone like,
yeah, like they're meant for I would say just everyone. They're not just meant
mm,
for physical therapists, but like maybe it's just like easier for me to digest because I usually know exactly what they're talking about. It's just a
yeah.
good refresher and learning some new tips along the way. So it's not like I'm sitting there with a pen and paper, like taking notes. It's like, oh yeah, this is good. This makes sense. Like I remember that. Like a Squat University has a great one.
Mm,
If you've ever heard of him.
yeah, he's on next week on this actually.
Oh really?
I spoke to him last week. He was cool.
Cool. I'll have to
Um,
listen to that
it was very hard not to just be like, so if I'm doing this, like to, because it was a video call, obviously, so it was very hard not to be like, what would you do if I started doing this? Like, ask them really specific questions about myself. It was very
one.
hard to
Right.
keep it like general and like, I just use listener questions instead.
Fix me, please.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like, have you got like 6 hours? Um, you've been on like Julie Foucher's podcast, you've been on Two Brain with Sean. Like, if you don't like listening to CrossFit in case you come up in conversation or in case you hear something about yourself, like, are you comfortable with being asked about yourself? Are you comfortable with like talking about yourself? And I suppose, I guess it's easier for being asked like directly about the sport, and it's like, remember when this happened at this event, what were you thinking then? But like, do you ever get edgy when it kind of maybe veers away from the sport more into like you?
No, I'm like an open book. I don't really like ever get nervous
Yeah.
on a podcast being asked questions because it's just like I'm not one of those. I'm not super private. Like I think that I'm in the spotlight for whatever reason to share my story, so I take advantage of that and I enjoy
Mm.
sharing it. So and I like listening to the podcast like with with that I was on or and then I may listen to other ones that interest me but like 2 days before the CrossFit games I'm not going to listen to the predictions of what I mean of the women's side. Like I don't need to hear that.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if anyone's maybe Matt and Tia might be fine with listening to it because they're
Yeah,
probably going to
I'm
hear
sure
like,
they
oh,
don't though. I'm sure most athletes don't.
yeah,
Like I would listen to the men's because of curiosity and like I'm a fan of the men's CrossFit just because
mm,
I'm not part of it and I know the guys and it's cool. But when it comes down to the nitty gritty and it involves me right before competition, especially like you don't need another like bug in your ear telling you, giving you too much confidence or tearing you down. Like either way, no one
yeah.
means it in a harsh manner, but like you're gonna take it personally.
Yeah, I always wonder. I've talked to a few presenters like on this, and I've always asked like, are you ever worried about offending or like, oh crap, what if they hear that thing that I said? And like, yeah, generally it's like you say, it's not meant from a bad place. It's not like they're like, oh, I hate Amanda, and I hope she comes last. It's just like, yeah, um,
They have to pick someone. So
yeah, exactly, yeah. Um, you mentioned like sharing that you're an open book. I guess especially lately you've been particularly open on social media about like body image and your like how you view and have viewed yourself, I guess, like in and out of the sport.
Mhm.
Um and how you've changed over the last few years, like weight changes and maybe getting hung up on your weight in the earlier days, I guess. Do you feel like pressure to look a certain way or to show a certain side of yourself? Because I guess it's something I've always been curious about because obviously sponsors expect certain things from their athletes, especially
Mhm.
when it's a sport like CrossFit where, you know, once the timer goes, like once once the clock starts, there's a lot of skin on show, male or female. It's just like, like it's too hot, let's whip everything off. Like and I guess the fans want to see and want to, I guess, whether they like it or not, or whether they intend to or not, they expect certain performances from their athletes, like, and they expect them to maybe look a certain way. Like, do you ever feel pressure externally from that kind of stuff?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's impossible not to.
Mm,
I think the hardest part for me, well, let's start with the easiest part. The easiest part is like when you're training for the games and you're eating for performance, the body's going to take care of itself. Like you're
mm,
not super stressed about what you look out like in that time period because you're training so much. You're eating a lot of food, but I'm making really good choices because it makes me feel better.
yeah.
So those months leading up into the games, like everyone leans out, everyone kind of gets in their tip top position. And it's not because you're really trying to, it's just the nature of what you're doing. So you show up to the games looking camera ready, but that's part of the process. For me, what's really hard is the off season. So like
Mm,
now, I know I'm not as lean as I normally am. It's fine, but then this is also the time of year where everyone wants to do photo shoots. So I'm like, oh crap. Like, the week after Thanksgiving or 2 days after Christmas, all this stuff, I'm like, they're trying to line up photo shoots. That stresses me out. I'm like, because you're not going to be wearing a shirt in a photo shoot. So it's
yeah.
like feeling okay about yourself with an extra 5 pounds of fluff over your abs is not the end of the world, but it's definitely something you think about. And do I let it dictate my decisions over the holidays? No, but I do definitely think about it. I'm like, oh crap, I'm gonna regret this at that photo shoot later this week. Oh well, like
Yeah. Oh, this is
I'm,
going to be so bad.
yeah, I'm definitely not the girl who's gonna starve myself over it, but it is something that does stress me out. And if I can avoid a photo shoot the week after holiday, I'm absolutely going to because it's more stress than necessary.
Yeah, I'll do it like 3 days post games. I'll do one then. I'm not doing
Yeah,
one 1st of
yeah,
January.
we have
Um,
a great
are
time.
you ever conscious then of like, say when you put up personal posts, or like say those kind of posts where it's like, here's me in whatever year it was, 2014, and here's me in like last year, whatever. Um, are you ever, I suppose, just because of the way the social media is, it's like a powder keg just waiting for someone to say the wrong thing, or to leave some low hanging fruit out there and just to be attacked, or for sharing the wrong thing. Like, are you ever wary when you're typing something up and posting it? Are you ever like, oh god, I hope like this comments are what I expect them to be, and that nothing ridiculous happens in the comment section or anything?
Yeah. So I've learned that usually if I'm hesitant or I'm nervous about posting something, that means I absolutely should post it because it means I'm being vulnerable and I'm sharing something that is real and it scares me to post it. So that means I absolutely should do it. And usually I get more positive, I always get more positive feedback than negative feedback.
Mm,
Over the years, it's gotten, and I know everyone gets it. I do feel like because I'm very muscular and veiny, I get it more than a lot of athletes with the steroid accusations. So that was really rough at the beginning. And now I'm totally at the point where it still is annoying. It still makes me mad. But I truly think that certain people think that it's not possible because they have certain body types and they have work ethics and they have just they have no idea what I've done my whole life and they have no idea what my parents look like and yet they have no idea or how strict I am with weighing my food. So of course they're going to think that like no female can look that way without cheating. Like
mm.
they truly think that. Like they're not trying to be mean to me. They just like think there's no way this girl's not cheating. So I think of it from that perspective and it makes me a little bit less mad and a little bit more understanding.
I guess
Because
in a
maybe
way it's a compliment, and well, I mean, it's definitely not intended as a compliment when it's typed, but like guess you can choose to take it as a compliment, because like whoever's typing it obviously thinks that what you're doing is so superhuman that it's not possible without the aid of science. Do you know, like that
right.
it's yeah.
Right. Like you look so good, you must be cheating. You think about it like that, it's like, okay, like they just really, really think that. And I can't take it personally.
Yeah. Um CrossFit itself then, like, if I was to describe it to someone, I'd describe it as like a multimodal sport. So like it's there's a lot under one umbrella, I guess. And like, you pre CrossFit had like a perfect varied multimodal background in sport. So like volleyball, so you've got your your fast twitch, you've got your hand-eye coordination, you've got your gymnastics, which obviously just is so transferable. Running, swimming, like was sport something that was were you kind of pushed to do that as a kid? Was it something that you gravitated towards naturally? Were you a sporty family, or was it more of like a black sheep kind of thing?
No, definitely a sporty family. Basically everyone has done sports in my family. My mom just wanted to start my sister and I really young, and just, I mean, especially with like swimming, she wanted us to be comfortable in the water. It wasn't
Yeah.
necessarily to make us swimmers. And like the gymnastics and the ballet was just for coordination purposes. And I just ended up like loving it and kept doing it. And my sister kept dancing because she loved that. But like those were her reasons for putting us in it, for like socialization, coordination, learning the skill of swimming. And then from there, it was just like trying more things, falling in love with certain sports. And just like after that, once it became more my choice, there was never a time period where I wasn't competing in a sport, because that's what I wanted to do. Like I never ever took a break. I mean, other than like, rest breaks like I do now, but like I never took a whole couple of months off of not doing something.
Yeah. Little did she know that by not wanting you to be clumsy or to drown, that she'd set you on this path.
I know. Like she thinks, I always tell her now, she's like, it's crazy to think that like, she's like, I've been driving you to sports your whole life. Like I did club volleyball for a long time. So we travel all around, competitions all weekend long. And then I'd go like straight to a track meet because it was in the same season, and she'd
Mm,
drive me from that to that. And the same thing during swim season. And then in the summers, I would do like club swimming and volleyball, and just like constantly that's what she was doing. And then in college she helped with our swimming, and then like now we're in CrossFit, and she's still driving to come watch me compete. And she's just like, I never thought that at your age you'd still be doing this, but like it's not surprising at all, just for like who I am and the drive I've always had for competing. So
yeah, that's cool. Um, where did your love affair with CrossFit start then? Usually, the stories I've heard are usually like, oh, my friend dragged me. But I'm guessing if you're into that much sport, it was probably like you just ended up doing it by accident.
oh yeah, I like seeked it out. I think I saw like someone post a video or something somewhere on social media. I saw it and I'm like, that looks really fun. So I like Googled CrossFit, and then I was like to my sister, I'm like, we're going to this tomorrow. I found a gym. Like, and I drug her with me. And like
That's cool.
I haven't stopped doing it since then.
Like in 2014 and 16, you're at regionals on a team. Like, how did you go from Googling what's CrossFit to it becoming like a competitive sport? Like, if it obviously you must have a competitive drive if you're saying that you've never not been competing basically in something.
Yeah.
So was it like you stepped foot in the gym and immediately felt a competitive drive to do well at it, or was there like a watershed moment where things changed from like the fitness of CrossFit to the competition of CrossFit?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, when I first walked in the gym, I didn't even know about the competitive part of CrossFit. I just thought it would be a really cool workout because I've always liked to work out really hard.
Yeah.
So that was why I got into it. And then I, became a huge fan of the games and watched it religiously. And still at that point, I wanted to be competitive, but I never was like, I'm going to be at the games, because I just could see the difference between them and me. And I knew I was good at CrossFit for the average gym goer, but I could also see the difference in thinking that like I didn't think I would ever get to that point. So I just wanted to do local competitions. I started doing competitions all over with friends and stuff, like just because I loved competing and like liked trying to get better at it, and giving me a reason to get a muscle up and all of those sort of things, until it
Mm.
like slowly evolved into, we want you to sign up for this open. And I'm like, I don't understand what it is, but sure. And in 2014, I was actually the alternate of the team because I was still in college swimming. So I wasn't doing CrossFit year round. I was just doing it over the summers. And I did the open. I actually didn't complete the open. I just signed up and did minimum work for every workout to get to be eligible to be on their team, because it was like the heat of my swim season. So I really couldn't have. I do remember that year though was the that deadlift box jump workout. And I think it was like 2 weeks after I had finished my swim season, and I hadn't done a single lick of exercise and hadn't been CrossFitting since the summer. And I did that workout, and like decent for the gym score, got the top gym score, and like, basically killed myself trying to get through those deadlifts. but they made regionals that year and I helped the team make it. I told them I did not want to be on the team. Number one, I didn't think it was fair because I
Yeah.
wasn't trained. I think that there was other girls way more deserving of a spot. And number two, I didn't feel ready. Like, couldn't do a muscle up. There was a lot of stuff I couldn't do and I wasn't training for it. So I probably would have just gotten hurt knowing how competitive I was. So I actually went and watched, and that was my first like in-person experience of watching the competition floor. And that was when I was like, I want to do this.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to be standing here watching. I want to be out there competing.
And then when you move from team to individual, like it it can't not be daunting, surely, when you have like a natural support network on the floor with you, where you can like, have someone put their arm around you, or like, give someone a high five or something, just to be like, right, okay, it's fine. I've got my friends with me or whatever. To suddenly just being totally isolated. Like, how did you deal with the transition well, or was it a struggle at the start?
No, I wanted the transition because our first experience as a team, like, we were in like almost dead last place, and I'm so competitive. I'm like out there and I'm like, this is not fun. Like, I am not having a lick of fun right now. Like, being with my friends, the camaraderie, all the stuff leading up to it was great fun. But like out on that competition floor when we weren't doing well, and I felt like at certain points my hands were tied. At certain points I was responsible for us not doing well, but like that was frustrating. And after that, it was like, okay, well, now you have to make the decision to train to be an individual. So you can't blame it on other people. Like, you're fully responsible for how you do.
And is that like, yeah, I guess so the individual thing was just like, if I do terribly, I want it to be just my fault. And if I do really well, I want to be able to put myself in a position to do really well, rather than be like, oh, I would have if not for like Brian's stupid deadlifts or whatever.
Right. It's just being ultra competitive, and like
Yeah.
you want to be able to, and that was back when team was like, the programming was different. Like, it was like 6 people doing an individual
Mm,
workout and you're standing there and waiting, and like
mm,
that's not fun when you're like watching what place you're in, and knowing that you could be so much better if you had the time to train and the ability to go there. So it was like, well, now I need to put in the time to try to see what I'm capable of doing by myself.
yeah. It obviously worked out okay. Um, you 2018, you had your rookie year at the games. You came third in in your region, and you had 7 top 5 finishes and an event win in your first year. So like properly stamping your name on the sport. Like, I've spoken to a few people who were at the games, and then their first year there, they maybe left like with a bit of an anticlimax, like bit like maybe more regrets than like a sense of happiness about it. Like, maybe they were frustrated that maybe they had a lot of what if moments, or they maybe let the occasion overawe them and were a bit like happy to be there, and then afterwards they're like, oh man, why didn't I push harder on that workout, or why didn't I chase that person that was just ahead of me? You don't seem to have suffered that, which is, I guess, it's slightly unusual in the sport.
Yeah, I mean, I was not satisfied with 15th place by any
Yeah.
means. I didn't necessarily, like, it being my rookie year, have like a number in mind where I was like gonna be satisfied with. But I think the hardest and the best part about it was that I had my finishes were either like top 10 or bottom 10. There
Mm,
wasn't, I think I maybe had one that was like in the 20s. Like, there wasn't many in that range. So it just showed me that, like, and they were all the same type of workouts. They're all upper body pulling gymnastics workouts where I was in the back half. So it was like, okay, clearly we have a problem that we need to work on in the fitness and the strengths. Like, your strengths are there. So it gave me a lot of confidence and a lot of direction of where I need to go the next year.
mm.
But I definitely didn't like, I wasn't like boasting about being 15th place in the world. I was hoping for better, but
Yeah.
I think that's part of the sport. You're kind of always hoping for better. So,
Do you think you're hard on yourself?
oh yeah.
Like, does it get you down? Like, do you ever like sit with your thoughts and think like, Jesus, go easy on yourself? Like,
I don't know. I think that, like, I never like get myself to a dark place, but
yeah.
I think what it does is keeps me striving for more. And I think the hardest part is kind of what I was talking about earlier with like training this time of year.
Mm,
um I'm like trying to preface myself now, like, do not be so hard on yourself in the next 2 weeks. and thinking that like your fitness is completely gone and
Mm.
maybe you should just retire because you're clearly not fit. Like that kind of stuff you got to just take out of your head for this time of year. And that happens right before the games too, but I think everyone goes through that where it's
Mm.
like, am I even fit right now? Like, just doubting a lot of stuff, but that's kind of what keeps pushing us. I think if you think you're good enough, you're in trouble because you're never going to be like trying to improve. So you want to think that you're always not quite there. So you keep striving for more, but you're also satisfied with who you are and the effort that you're putting in. So you're not constantly beating yourself up and mad at yourself.
Has that second part been like a recent thing for you to be able to do, or have you always been able to balance out the, I guess, negativity with like, well, I need this negativity to push me on?
I think I've always been pretty good at it. Like, I mean, before CrossFit, I was in physical therapy school trying to get my doctorate, and it was really hard school, and I was really hard on myself. Like,
Mm.
I wanted to get A's, and I wanted to do really well, and I would, of course, be disappointed if I got a B or really you can't get C's in doctorate school. So you got a C, you're in big trouble. So if I got a B, I was like, oh, disappointed, but I also realized like at the end of the day, there's more than things that matter in life than your grade or your finish at a competition. So I feel like I do a pretty good job of keeping perspective of that, but it also is what drives me to want to do better on the next test or do better in the next competition.
Yeah. Um, 2019, then you went back for, I mean, like, as far as you're saying, it sounds like redemption, having finished a lowly spot of 15th. Like, most people would have been pretty happy with 15th, but you like everything's, I guess, incredibly different compared to the previous year. So like maybe just finding your feet with regionals, getting confident with that. Then you got the games and you're getting used to that and everything's, you're like, right, okay, I know what to expect. And then it's like, wait, why is everything changing like so drastically? But you proved, I guess, you proved that you belong. You made it back in top 10. Like, did it take from the experience how different it was? Was it like, were you mourning regionals? Was it like upsetting that it wasn't the same as it was? Or did you just accept it and, I guess, meet the challenges head on and see what happened?
I mean, at first I was like anyone, a little worried about what the season was going to look like and what it was going to mean. But at the same time, I'm like, I told myself like probably a week after we found out, I'm like, well, if the goal's the same, it shouldn't matter how we get there.
Hmm.
And if I'm as good as I plan to be, getting there should not be a problem. So it's like when it changes, everyone freaks out about whether it's gonna be harder, easier to qualify, and you know whatever. But it's like again, I'm not trying to get 15th place or I'm trying to do a lot better than that. So if my fitness is there and I'm doing everything as I should be, I should end up in the same place regardless of the route to get there. So I kept that in perspective during the time that we didn't really know what was happening. And I think it helped a lot and just kept me focused on what I needed to do.
Is it hard? Like, because I can kind of see it from both sides. So I can see it from the perspective of, say, whoever's going to finish in 120th, to be like, holy crap, I'm at the games, or like I have a shot of making it to the games. But if you're someone who is anticipating making it back and you think like, yeah, I know exactly what I have to do and I'm going to do it and I'm going to get there, great. And then they change the system. Are you like, how the hell are they going to incorporate an extra 110 athletes on top of what they already did? Like, is it frustrating when the field grows, or are you like, this is great for the sport because so many more people are going to see it, or so many more people are going to have a chance of thinking, oh, I could make it there, so I'm going to get involved?
I think I can definitely see it from both perspectives. Like, I want the sport to grow. I want as many people to be involved as possible. But from the selfish perspective of like when I had to make the games from regionals, like that was cutthroat and it was brutal and it was stressful and it was really hard to make it. And making it not as hard and making it more inclusive kind of downplayed
Hmm.
the title of being a CrossFit Games athlete, which I had dreamt of and worked so hard for so many years. So from that perspective, it sucked a little, but I don't want to be selfish about those kind of things. And, I do believe that everyone else who got there did work hard. It's
Mm,
just on a different scale of how long they've been doing in
mm,
their fitness level. It's not to say that they didn't work just as hard as me, because I hate when people say, I worked harder than anyone else. I'm like, every single one of us works so freaking hard. Like, you can't say you worked harder. It's just either you've had more time, you have, better genetics or whatever it is, or you've done things differently, but it doesn't necessarily mean anyone has worked harder than anyone else.
yeah. Um, if your background is like, I guess, aerobic and gymnastics, if you've got your swimming, your running, and then gymnastics when you're a kid, like it must be incredibly satisfying to be down to the final two in a weightlifting event then at the CrossFit Games. Like it must be, like if it was a running event or a swimming event and you've had, college swimming behind you, it's kind of like, yeah, okay, that's probably expected, like that you do well in a swimming event when you're a swimmer or you were a swimmer. And then for it to be a weightlifting event must be like, hell yeah, like this is, this must be a nice feeling of belonging.
So I think, like, even though I was technically a gymnast, my husband's being weird in the background, but I don't know what he's doing.
That's a
Jeans.
husband's job.
Oh yeah, okay. He's like pointing to his blue jeans. So even though I was a gymnast, I wouldn't consider myself, I mean, the gymnastic stuff is what I struggle with most at the games. And I think it's a lot to do with just, I never developed the upper body pulling strength. Like, I'm pretty good at handstand events because of my experience being a gymnast.
But you're probably
That's,
like what, 13 or 14 or something when
yeah,
you stopped.
exactly. I quit when I was 13.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think, like, from that perspective, I got a lot of help in the gymnastics area. But otherwise, the CrossFit gymnastics is so much upper body
Mm,
pulling, which I did not have and still am trying to work on. So that was truly my weakness area. Although I haven't had experience in Olympic weightlifting, brute strength has just been a part of my genetics and a part of my upbringing. And yes, I've made a lot of progress in my strength over the years, but it is truly not something that we ever spend a ton of time like, I need to get stronger. It truly just happened with the process. And I attribute a lot of that to my background and my family genetics. So whenever we got to the weightlifting events, it was like I was kind of always on the stronger end. And I don't really know how that happened. It just So then I was always super confident when the heavy barbell came up, especially the clean. I was like, oh,
mm,
this is perfect. Because it's not as skilled, because my lack of skill in that area is still something we're working on with the jerk and the snatch. So just the pure clean, where it's basically just like, how much can you pull off the ground and get under it, is best case scenario for me.
mm.
Which is kind of like how I felt with the gosh, what did we do in 2018?
The speed ladder.
Yeah, the speed ladder, because it was like, it wasn't heavy enough that the technique mattered for me.
Mm,
If it would have been like 245, it would have slowed me down a lot more at the end. But 225 being that weight where it's like I pretty much know I can always hit it. It just became a rip it type workout for me, which is like great because that's what I'm good at. So
Um, going back a little bit then, uh, pre weightlifting event last year on the ruck run on Friday, you went over on your ankle, which like it's not ideal. It's definitely not ideal in the middle of a weighted run or before a squat clean event or sprints or an event with a hell of a lot of pistols in it. Like I have terrible ankles. I've gone over on my ankle. And I heard you talk about this, and you said that you heard that you were like, oh, it was so loud. And
Mhm.
I've had that where I've gone over on my ankle and I was like, did everyone hear that? And
Mhm.
they're all like, no. And it's, like it's an internal crack. And I've had
Yeah.
that moment where you're like, oh my God, my ankle is broken. Like I can't move. And I've had to be like carried off the pitch or carried off the field or whatever. And like, keep my leg elevated for, 2 weeks and wear a boot and everything. How, first of all, did you continue to run with weight on your back? And then, like, the aftermath, obviously, like, adrenaline is going to get you to a certain point.
Right.
And I guess, like, slamming down negative thoughts is going to get you to a certain point. But, like, after you sit down after that event, like, there must have been conversations about, like, I'm not sure if strapping this is going to cut it.
Right. Yeah. those last 2 laps were probably the hardest thing I've ever had to push through. And like that's having adrenaline there. It did hurt pretty bad, but it also was like the adrenaline, I think definitely helps with the pain. It was just the fact that I didn't really have much ability to push off of my foot. So I felt like I was really turning my foot out to try to get more like
Mm.
didn't have any push off in that position. And I didn't trust it. So I was trying to like keep it from rolling again and just feeling like my games would potentially be over, I think is what was really looming on me. So that was what made those 2 laps the hardest. Going into the next event, I honestly didn't even know if I could push the sled. Like I was like, I just don't know if I have any push off. And for the whole rest of the weekend, it was really hard because like when you're out on the floor, you feel pain a little bit, but you don't feel very much. But the warming up was always really bad, or like I would sit for a while and get up. I could barely walk to the bathroom, and it's like I'm like limping right now, but I'm like about to go push a sled and win, which like seems unbelievable. And it's like I would never be the person to like fake that or, but
Yeah.
it was just like that's the reality of competition. And you like take some Tylenol and you tape it up and you feel it, but not enough to affect you too much. It did definitely affect me on the sprint, the pistols, and the double unders were the 3 hardest things to do.
Mm.
The straight sprint was bad because I couldn't stay up on my toes. I was basically like heel running for a sprint, which is not fast. And I ran track in high school, so like I'm not super slow. And the turns, it was the cutting that like
Mm.
really got me. I just like basically came to a dead stop when I had to push off my left foot because I just didn't have it. And then what do we do? Like 500 double unders. And I,
Mm.
I couldn't really like bound again because it's up on your toe. I basically needed to have my heel down at all times to be able to feel like I had any push off. So I think I did most of those double unders on my right foot, which caused a lot of a lot of other issues.
Yeah. It's like basically all the events, all the remaining events required push off because either you're on the assault bike and you're obviously going to need to push. You're
Mhm.
on double unders, like you say. Obviously, if you're doing a clean, you're going to need that triple extension, which
Right.
like presumably was difficult to manage. Like you had to kind of force these things. I guess like is there almost a curse of knowledge there as well as a physio, thinking like, oh, it's probably this ligament, which means that
Oh
this is
yeah.
going to be sore.
Yeah. I mean, I literally thought like originally that I like snapped a ligament for sure, but I think they were just so stretched out that it was just super stretched. And I think what most of the pain was is that my bones like clunked together and I had a really bad bone bruise from having
Okay.
40 pounds on my back. So that was like, I had so much pain on the inside of my ankle and it was like you couldn't even touch it. And I think it was just like from a really bad bone bruise. I actually just got the x ray that like CrossFit had me do. And I never got any other imaging because the PT in me knows like I'm not going to have surgery no matter what they tell me because I'm functioning well enough. So I don't really want to know what is going on in there. I'm just going to work on what my weaknesses are because it's not going to help me
Yeah.
knowing that I have a partial tear in something. Like I'm going to work on my balance. I'm going to work on my strength and work on my pain management and I'll be fine. So,
Yeah. It's mad. Like I'm uh, even as you're describing the aftermath, all I'm thinking of is that feeling of going over on it, and it's like I think once you experience that, it's difficult to get away from it. Like to to not be like overly mindful of it, like to not be like, oh, what's on the ground up there. Like even now,
oh
sometimes when we're running, like the gym is a fairly flat surface, like it's like a road outside, it's fairly flat, but I'm still like my eyes are like darting around just in case there's like a pebble or like a divot or something.
oh yeah.
It's
When I
just not.
saw when I saw all those trail runs in stage 2, I thought to myself, maybe there's a reason I'm not there right now because my ankles would be broken.
Yeah, that's fair, that's fair. 2020 then is obviously all over the place, so like y- I guess you still got to compete, so you had the invitational, um, and you had a seventh place finish and a few top five finishes. Then you had the games stage one, a seventh place finish, and online competing again. So I guess it's not it's not the same buzz. I guess. Um, were they enjoyable competitions? Was it like a nice distraction from everything else that was going on? Was it, you know, I guess I'm always curious. people who did it, would they almost sooner have just written off the year? And like, was there too many peaks and troughs, or would you rather compete whatever the cost?
I would rather compete whatever the cost. I mean, if you online competition, I really hate online competitions, to be honest. I'm such an in-person gamer. I have a really, really hard time. I mean, we've known this for years, just like in training. I'm just like, my dad always used to tease me. He's like, you're not good at practice. Like, I mean, I'm trying to be good at it, but I'm just like, I've always been in person, like when the lights are on, like that's when I have the fire to like really go.
Mm,
So it's been a challenging year for me. I mean, from the open, like I had a really rough open, and same deal, like it's online. It's just, I mean, I struggle. And obviously some of those movements weren't my best in the first two, but still. And then you go to Rogue and it's the same situation. You're by yourself in dead silence. And then the games becomes that. So it was mentally like, gosh, come on again. But when I think about the alternative of nothing happening,
mm,
and, I maybe like in a moment would have thought, man, maybe it'd be nice if this just didn't happen. I can enjoy my summer. But to be truthful, I probably wouldn't have enjoyed it. I would have been like, man, I really wish we're training for something, like, because that's what I
mm,
do and that's what I want to be doing. So I think that I'm very grateful for, that we got it. And I'm proud for as well as I did, considering the circumstances, knowing the type of athlete I am and how challenging the year was for me. Just training alone a lot. So, and when I look back at that, I'm proud of the seventh place. Obviously, I want to do better than seventh place considering I got seventh last year. But when you look at the year as a whole, it's like I still am pretty proud.
yeah. Um, are you obviously stage one and stage two? The workouts were like very different. So, were you kind of eyeing up stage two, being like, "Damn it! Like I would have preferred that than this," or was there obviously you didn't want the ruck run, but like or the trail run, but the other things were you kind of eyeing them up enviously?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, we just would have like massively taped my ankles and I would have been fine. But yeah, I loved all the workouts. I think I mean, that last one would have probably ruined me with 300 pull-ups, but that's not the workout that Amanda Barnhart's going to win
Yeah,
on her absolute best day. So, I mean, that would have just been a get through workout for me anyways. But the rest of the weekend, I was like, I mean, that's what the games is supposed to be like. So I'm
yeah,
sure every other athlete looking down the outside, looking in, was like, man, I wish we could do that too, because that's what we train for. We don't
yeah,
train for the online competitions doing thrusters and pull-ups in our gym. Like, we train for that because we have to do it and it's part of the process. But we really train for what stage two was.
yeah. I was thinking there it might be nice payback for Carrie Pierce from was it Chaos, where you like just breeze past her at the end, or if she was able to just be like, "Now this is my wheelhouse. This is what I'm good at."
I know.
Yeah. Um, you mentioned there about the invitational being in silence, and then the games. Like, were you envious of other gyms who had like a big setup with like their local government or whatever was allowing more people to be around each other and stuff? Like, was it hard watching other competitors like say Brooke had like a crowd there, she was able to have a crowd to watch her and stuff. Was it hard watching that, or were you even aware of what other people were doing other than the leaderboard?
I mean, I had a pretty decent crowd of people cheering me on too at the stage one of the games,
Yeah,
and it was helpful. But like at the end of the day, what's helpful is being in a race with a competitor,
yeah,
not someone being like, yay, keep going. Like, I'm already doing like what I think is my best in that moment. But like the second you're like actually competing against someone, everyone takes it into a
yeah,
different gear. I mean, you see it with Matt and Tia in stage two. Like, they're just that good that they don't have to go to that gear very often. But the second someone's there challenging them, they both go to that second level. So
yeah,
everyone has it. Some people are better at doing it without the other competitor there than others, and I'm just not one of those people. But it's something I know that I need. I don't want it to be an excuse for why I didn't make it. I want to be able to be good enough in every circumstance.
mm,
I mean, Tia's a great example. Like, she's that good no matter what, but she also has another gear. So like, if you want to be able to compete with her, you got to be that good too.
mm. Um, 2021 then, if we'll just pretend the world is fine.
Yeah.
um,
Pretend it happened.
2020 was just a blip and everything just goes back to normal at like midnight on the 1st of January.
Yeah.
Um, the I've heard bandied around, I've heard the idea of an off-season competitive uh calendar or competitive opportunities. It seems to be like, coming to the fore, and I guess to make use of all the hard work that the sanctional operators have put in place and stuff, so that it's not lost if things do go back towards a more regionals based qualifying thing. Is that something that would interest you if it had no bearing on the games? Like if it was just, like a league, a separate entity still within CrossFit, but not, you know, uh, anything to do with qualification, or is your sole focus the games?
Um, it obviously interests me because it's number one, really fun to compete,
Mm,
and number two, there's usually good money in those type of events. So it's definitely something that's enticing. But at the end of the day, my goal is the games for now. So I'd have to look at the calendar and see like, can we make it work? Is it worth it? Is this going to be detrimental to my training? Because I think it's a lot of people think that competing is good training, but it's not. It takes away from your training. So yeah, you learn stuff, but it takes away from your actual like training progress, because you have to rest before or rest after. You're beat up for a while, so it would have to be very strategic and have to fit nicely for me to do it. But I'm hoping it's a possibility because we love to compete, and I want to compete more than once next year.
yeah. I
Definitely.
guess if you went to Australia and stuff, it's obviously there's the travel element as well that's exciting too, like.
Yeah, I mean that was why we wanted to go. It's like cool, we get to go to Australia. This is awesome. I wouldn't do it again, honestly, because I didn't sleep for like a month after coming back from Australia. It did affect me, but trying to stay a little bit closer. The time zones don't do me justice. So
Yeah, it's all as well though. I suppose it's something you could easily get suckered into doing, where like, oh, I'll do this one in Brazil and I'll do this one in what, and then all of a sudden your off season is gone and you've wrecked your body coming into January. You're like, oh, maybe I should have like thought this out a bit better. Like it will be interesting to see who does what, and like, I know that Brent and a few others have kind of, they've taken the lead on that athlete association. It'll be kind of interesting to see if there's any pressure put on athletes to go and to attend certain things from HQ, or to, because obviously it's good advertising for the sport. It's good, I guess you call it, maybe community outreach is the wrong word. That makes it sound like fans are like at risk, but like, you know what I mean, like that it's obviously good for the sport that they're on, and it's good for the different nations and the different communities around the world. But it puts a lot of pressure on athletes if it's like, oh, Amanda, would you mind going to Japan in December? And it's like, well, the opens in February.
right, yeah. I'm really good at saying no to that kind of stuff because I keep my eyes on what the end goal is. But I definitely will be tempted to be a part of one or two if
Hmm.
I can work in my schedule.
Hmm. Have you thought about like uh when you finish competing, or is that something that's like too far away that it's not even in your realms of possibility? It's not even worth thinking about yet.
Well, I am 29, so it's definitely something I've thought about. I'm not ready to be done.
Yeah.
As long as my body continues to hold up, I feel like I'm still making progress and I'm still enjoying it. I want to keep doing it. But I mean, I know there's going to be a certain point where I don't think it's going to be like a drastic decline, but where I'm going to feel like I'm not making so much progress. And that may be a time where I'm have to consider, you know, retiring.
Yeah. Do you think, you're obviously very driven, as in like you want to keep climbing towards your goal. Do you think if you say, we'll say the next 2 years are normal, like CrossFit years, like I know this year's kind of an anomaly. It's kind of difficult to take anything, you know,
Mhm.
you're kind of taking everything with a pinch of salt, I guess. Like, your own performance, other people's performances, like you kind of have to be careful how much you read into everything, I guess. Um, if you have a proper off season, a proper ramp up, proper open, everything this year and next year, and say you finish like, I don't know, we'll go like just purely hypothetically, if you finish like fifth next year and then finish like 12th the year after, is that the kind of thing that would make you think, no, okay, it's time to call it? Or is that the kind of thing that would make you think, no, screw that, I'm finishing higher than fifth in 2022
Yeah. I
or
definitely
23?
see both spectrums of that. I think it would just depend on like why. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like did did something like really go wrong at the games? Was I truly like giving my best effort and I'm just not there anymore?
yeah,
Um, I think that would play heavily on my decision because it's a lot of sacrifice. It's a lot of time. We do want to have a family. So it's like for me to put a whole nother year in, if I really truly don't think I'm going to get
yeah,
much further, then it may be time to give it up. But if it was something that, went really wrong and I know why I ended up in 12th, then I would likely want to go for another shot.
yeah. Obviously, it's all irrelevant because you're going to win next year anyway, so it's fine. You don't even need
Yeah.
to. Yeah. Sorry. So I'll finish with a quick fire. I'm just looking at a couple of the questions I've written, and like one or two of them are just irrelevant now because you've answered them during it. But anyway, they're all either or.
Okay.
So, row or ski,
Row.
assault bike or bike erg.
Bikerg.
Yeah, no one really likes the assault bike
I
because
like
like
both, honestly. I like biking, but I don't know if both was an option.
no, it's not really. It kind of defeats the purpose, I suppose. It's like let's just love everyone and everything's great.
Right.
Okay, here's one of the gimmies then: clean or snatch.
Clean.
Yeah, thought that. Squat or press? Another gimme, I think.
Press.
Whoa, really?
Yeah.
God,
Like a strict press?
is that because you're working on it more, or I would have
Like a
thought,
strict press?
yeah, or
I
any
like
kind of
strict
press, I
press.
guess.
No, I like pressing. It's pulling that I'm not good at.
Okay, yeah.
I strict
Um,
pressed 150 in 2018, so I like pressing.
straight press 150. That's pounds. Yeah, that's more than. It's a good bit more than I can do. That's yeah. And you're a professional athlete. It's fine. Regionals or sanctionals?
Um, Sanctionals?
Wow, really?
I don't know. That's really tough. Like
Mm,
I loved the closeness of regionals, but I also liked the opportunity to compete more, to compete in different places,
mm,
and we made a lot more money. So like it's
yeah,
kind of hard to when you're trying to make a living doing this to say that regionals was better because it's like if you won regionals, you got $5,000 and you only competed once all year.
yeah,
Like
yeah. It doesn't really make bank.
yeah,
Um,
doesn't really help us make a living.
it's like we're living in a cardboard box, but regionals is still around.
Right.
Um, well, listen, thanks a million for that. That was great. I really enjoyed that.